Welcome to episode 2 of our Stay Safe, Stay Home series. I'm Matt Nicol, the managing director of Nicol Co. I'm presenting this new series, a Vodcast, to focus on how the local community is coping with a huge economic disruption caused by COVID-19 pandemic. In each episode, we're going to give people a voice to discuss their challenges, share their experiences, and explain how they're dealing with this crisis. Today, I'm very lucky to be joined by Bradley Thomas, the leader of Wychavon District Council. So, Bradley, thank you ever so much for joining us.
Hi, Matt. Hi. Happy to join.
Thank you. So tell us a little bit more about yourself. Where were you born? Where were you educated? And where have you worked before?
Okay, sure. Yeah. So I'm a local person, born in Worcestershire. Grew up near Evesham. Went to high school there at Prince Henry's, which was a superb school. I went on to university, and that was in Leicester. I studied law, and then after that, I joined the energy industry. So background in oil. And I've done numerous jobs in the oil industry, and more recently that's been in strategy roles, working around things like alternate fueled vehicles, how the future of oil retailing will adapt given the pressures on conventional retail fuels, fossil fuels, all of that. So looking ahead, but it's so far it's been good. It's been a lot of fun, but definitely a local person. Born and bred, and Worcestershire is a fantastic place to be, especially Wychavon, and there's so much that we've got to offer. So really proud to sort of be leading the local district council and trying to do my bit to make a difference.
Yeah, fantastic. And how did you become the leader of Wychavon District Council? How does someone become the leader?
So I became a councillor back in 2014, and I stood for election because, like everybody, I kind of thought, why do they do that? Why do they do stuff that way? And why don't they do this? There were just a few little issues. I can't even remember what they were now, but they were minor points. And I suppose I thought, well, why not get involved? So stood for election, got elected to the council. I've been a councillor ever since, and joined the Wychavon cabinet, which we refer to our cabinet as an executive board. And the reason Wychavon does that is because we've got a very commercial, business-like mindset. We're very agile for a district council. We invest like a business to deliver financial returns to the council, but also wider economic and social returns. So I joined the cabinet back in 2016 and then became leader in 2018 after the group elected me. And we've put in place, I've been leader for 18 months, we've put in place a brand new strategy at the start of this year for the forthcoming 4 years, and that's really focusing on the local economy. It's focusing on the environment, and it's focusing on people and the places that matter. And so each year we announce a new set of promises and priorities that we want to focus on, and the ones we've announced this year are certainly the most ambitious. And I can't go through them all because there's a long list, but some real innovative stuff around focusing on building a cycling centre at Evesham, at the valley there. We've got a long-term priority around social mobility, so ensuring that kids who are born in Wychavon have the best chance in life. We've got long-term financial stability at Wychavon, so a commitment to investing in the right things, and particularly ones that deliver, as I said before, a social and economic return for the people, but which give the council a financial return too. So if I give a couple of examples that are certainly noticeable, the Waitrose stores in Evesham and Droitwich, they were both funded by Wychavon. The council owns both of those, gets rental income from those, but in turn we have a top tier tenant occupying prime real estate land within those towns, and of course you get from that creation of high quality local jobs for local people, and then hopefully the towns benefit from the footfall and people spending time, and then that additional spend within the town centres. So
positive impact on house prices as well.
Absolutely, yeah. That's what it's all about. So we want everyone to benefit. It's about the district councils in particular, because people often conflate, county council with a district council, and to many residents there is just the council, and I fully understand that. But different tiers are responsible for different things. But one of the areas that districts do particularly well are around that placemaking agenda. So fostering, economic development, a sense of place, a stronger sense of community. And that's all stuff that it's not insignificant. That's the tangible stuff that really makes a difference.
And thank you. Recently, the executive board supporting the cabin as well at George Farm.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's part of our long-term legacy with the community. So Wychavon invests record amounts for a district council, I think, in our community. So, from the period 2015 to 2019, before the elections last May, Wychavon had invested over £22 million across the district in local projects. And we're doing the same now. We announced back in February, I think it was £844,000 to be invested in community projects. And of course, the cabin was one of them. And this is about making a long-term difference to the community. So there's something really tangible for communities to benefit from, whether it be, sort of sports provision, whether it's stuff to help children and education. It's about thinking outside of the box, but doing stuff that's got public buy-in, because that's a really crucial thing. Councils, if they wanted, could just write checks for things. But if you want to really create a legacy, you've got to get public buy-in. And I think that's something that we do quite well. And I know the cabin in particular is a really good example where, local people supported it. And thanks to you and everyone who was involved in bringing that to fruition. Because if people like you didn't come up with the ideas and bring them forwards, then, we wouldn't be able to drive stuff forward with a real sort of community legacy running right through the middle of it.
No, that's brilliant. And once again, thank you for your support with that. So we're both working from home at the moment, as are many others, and we should really touch upon COVID-19. And I was just wondering kind of how it's affected the council, really, the staff you have, the services they provide. Would you mind? I mean, I mentioned kind of before we started this recording that I'd seen through social media that you'd supported Droitwich by, reducing the cost in parking, but how's it affected the council and the staff and the services that you're providing?
I mean, it's fair to say that, business as usual is gone. But I think we found a new normal. That's probably the best way to describe it. So like everybody who's working from home, and like every single business up and down the country that's been impacted, we've had to adapt to new ways of working. So from a council perspective, what that means is that, the core services, it's crucial that we deliver those. So things like waste are continuing. Across Wychavon, there's been no reduction at all in the waste service. People are still having black bins, brown bins for garden waste, and their green recycling bins collected. What we've had to do is stop the bulky waste collections. This is something if people book for, I don't know, a fridge or something to be collected, to be disposed of. But otherwise, that is business as usual. And, the same on things like supporting statutory services like housing. We've got an obligation there to support people who need housing support, and that is continuing. And staff in those functions are working from home. So, the staff who are going out doing the waste collections, we support them by giving them the required PPE so that they can do their job safely. There's been a huge outpouring of thanks to those people who go and collect the bins, and that certainly is noticed by them, and I know they're massively appreciative of it. I mean, last week after Wychavon gave them all a load of Easter eggs, they just took them off to the local hospital and donated them all to the local kids. They're just they've been overwhelmed by thanks they've received from the local people, and we all recognise the valuable job they do. But in terms of other services, car parking and things like that, we've stopped charging in our car parks, and that's the right thing to do, partly because we need people to be able to go into our town centres and just go to the shops, get the things they need as swiftly as possible. We want to minimise people touching, the payment machines as well. So if people do see any parking enforcement officers out and about, what they'll actually be looking for are people obstructing blue bays, because it's crucial that disabled people and those in vulnerable positions can still access the priority parking that is available to them. So, broadly from a council perspective, we're doing as much as we can. Everyone is working flat out, and particularly with the delivery of the business grant support that government announced. I mean, I know that your business has been in receipt of that as an eligible recipient, and so, literally thousands across the district. I mean, Wychavon have so far, as of this morning, paid out to well over 1,000 businesses. 53% of all businesses eligible for a grant have received a payment, whether it's £10,000 or £25,000, depending on eligibility, and our team at Wychavon will be working all over the weekend as well to get those payments in the system ready, that on Monday morning they can all be paid out. I mean, the crucial thing here is that, you know, we recognise the government have provided fantastic amount of support to local businesses and to keep the economy going during this, you know, unprecedented time of crisis, and district councils have got a role to play. So, you know, as the leader of district council, I want all local businesses that are eligible to receive their payments as swiftly as possible, to give them a confidence that, you know, they're not alone. Because in many cases, particularly where, you know, business has dried up, 10 grand or 25 grand, that is going to make a huge difference to the viability of those businesses.
Definitely. And again, you've just said it in terms of the speed that you're trying to do it in, but it was, we were amazed at the speed it did come through. So massively appreciated by us. And I'm sure other businesses, if they had the opportunity to thank the staff that will be working this weekend, would definitely do so, because it makes a big difference for people who have a lot of concerns at the moment that putting food on the table is the most important, but they might have staff that they're employing that they, you know, got on furlough or employed at the moment. So no, it is hugely appreciated. So yeah, thank you.
Undoubtedly. And on that, you know, the other service that we're working flat out in providing is around, you know, benefit support too. So those residents who might be needing, you know, things like council tax support, you know, there are a lot of queries coming in there. So it's crucial that we deliver that too. The government have nationally said that there's £500 million of cash available there. And of course, you know, we're responsible for ensuring that people receive that support. So it's crucial that we support, you know, everyone across the board, whether it's businesses or individuals.
In simple terms, if people do have concerns, Bradley, along those lines, where are they best to go? Do they go straight onto your website?
Yeah, best place to go is www.wychavon.gov.uk/coronavirus. There'll be all the information there. Certainly for businesses, there's a form to fill in so that you can receive your grant payment that we just spoke about. And then for individuals, there's information on how they can access any council tax support that they might be eligible for too. So that should certainly be the first port of call for anyone who's got any concerns.
Brilliant, thank you. So how have you adapted to getting through the economic shutdown? We were talking off air, and busier than ever, I assume, but
yeah, I mean, it certainly is. It does feel busier than ever. I think for me, because, you know, I've worked from home quite a lot anyway, it's not been too much of a personal adjustment. I mean, I don't know about you, but certainly having a structure to your day helps. So, you know, I've seen stuff online where people have, you know, said that they're struggling to find a structure and a motivation in their day, particularly if they're people who are furloughed. But I think just, you know, practically, you know, like structuring exercise at a certain time and trying to have as much of a sense of normality in life as possible is certainly the best way to get through it. But, you know, I think we've got to be mindful that some are going to find this a lot harder than others. But I think, you know, in the grand scheme of things, given that, you know, we're all being asked to, you know, stay home and ultimately save lives, you know, being asked to stay indoors, you know, it's something we can all do. We can all play our part, and it's, you know, it's not the most arduous of tasks to be asked to do at the end of the day.
No, and we've been fortunate as well. Obviously, I'm a parent with 2 children, and the great weather we've had today, it's been a bit of a blessing really for the kids to be able to run around in the garden, and they haven't been, you know, cooped up inside. So
yeah,
I think that's been something. And I just mentioned whilst we're talking that obviously whilst people are furloughed, there's still the opportunity for them to train. So if they do want to take on more skills whilst they're in this opportunity, there is things that can still get their minds going, and there are opportunities to self-teach or do some learning, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point. And, you know, not everyone is going to be sat at home watching Netflix, but I'm sure people will pick up new hobbies. I read something that sales of jigsaw puzzles have gone absolutely through the roof, and, you know, things like that. We were just saying before we came online that, you know, someone said it's the small things that are actually the big things. And I wonder if, as a consequence of all of this, you know, it makes people stop and think about, you know, what stuff really matters in life, you know, sort of quality time, quality leisure time, and perhaps striking a better balance in terms of that work-life balance.
So where do you think it's going to leave us after the pandemic ends? Obviously, we were talking, we don't know quite when it's going to end, how long is a piece of string, but what do you think the new normal will be? What do you think is going to change forever? Is there anything you kind of think that's just not going to be there anymore? Something else is going to evolve from that? Or
I mean, I suppose there are loads of different ways that this will impact lives. I mean, there'll be the cultural side of things in terms of, work culture. I wonder if businesses will go back to wholesale practices of expecting everybody to be in the workplace all of the time. I hope that people embracing, the current technology that we've got enables people to take a more relaxed approach and think, yeah, people can work from home to strike that better work-life balance, perhaps. But from a more serious perspective too, I think we've all got concerns about the economic fallout too. The government have been remarkable in the support they've provided. They've shored up the economy remarkably well, and I thank them tremendously. But at the same time, we've already got challenged high streets in particular. That Wychavon have long had this focus on high streets, and we're sort of commencing the master plan process to think about what the future of Droitwich, Evesham and Pershore town centres would look like. And I suppose I fear that, the challenge is going to be even more compounded when we come out of this, and we're faced with, an even tougher set of circumstances. I mean, you work in the property industry, Matt, and I fear that the investment hurdles that were probably in some cases quite great anyway, particularly in town centres for retail, they're just going to be even greater because of obvious challenges that are arising. And then I think we've got to think about the wider cultural vibrancy of our town centres and the offering, and how we support the local economy in general, because it's crucial to keep money in people's pockets, to keep people in employment, because that leads to the wider overall economic strength of where we live. So that's a big concern. I think in terms of the council, we're adapting to agile ways of working too. So from I think the week after next, we're going to be hosting virtual meetings, and that's brand new for us. The government have just mandated that councils can do this, so we're thinking about how we can be more innovative. But I think generally speaking, I hope that across the board, coming out of this, everyone thinks about particularly in business, around do we need to host that meeting, things like that. Think about what's important, because undoubtedly in every sector, and I'm sure you can speak in a second about impacts in your own business, so I'm keen to hear that. Have you sort of culled some of the meetings and thought, well, actually that stuff's not essential, let's think about what we really need to do to keep the business functioning during this really difficult time?
Yeah, I think for us it'll be there'll be some significant changes, because we offer virtual tours on a lot of our properties anyway, and I think the new norm will probably be that clients get to see a virtual tour of a property before they then book their viewing, because we'll have phenomenal amount of viewings that will carry out on properties, and often the buyer may show a slight interest but didn't really think it was for them, they're just coming anyway. But I think the opportunity to be able to do a virtual tour view, maybe flagged up that it starts on Thursday at 6:30, you can have your first virtual tour viewing, and then thereafter, if you're interested, we'll organise the next appointment. I think there'll be some changes to the business that we work in currently. I think most businesses now looking at their processes. I think that's one of the things. You kind of look at how you've been doing things. Is it the right way to be doing it? You've been doing it for doing its sake, or is there now an opportunity to really reimagine? And that's one of the quotes that I've kind of held on to reimagine rather than rebuild. It's really to kind of think about what it could look like when you go back into work. So
I like that, reimagine rather than rebuild, and it sort of makes you appreciate that in adversity there is still opportunity, undoubtedly. Whilst it's difficult, sort of on a day-to-day level to think about how this is going to play out and how this will end. At the end of the day, there will be a lot of innovation that comes out of it, particularly from the private sector, because the private sector is fantastic at innovating. And, I know people use cliches all the time, but, in the future, things I'm sure will be a lot brighter than they've been in the past, just because of the struggles that people have faced during this, and the sort of innovative, agile ways that, we adapt to it.
And some may well be saving money at the moment, obviously missing out on things. I was going to ask you shortly what you're going to do first when it's all lockdown finishes, maybe with still some restrictions applied, but what are you missing out on? The nip into the cafe for a coffee, actually being in a place where there's other people. It's that. But I think that will probably mean that the high streets are, there's more footfall drivers than we probably doubt, but there's going to be things that bring people into the town centre. They want to go and support local businesses. Is a real positive. So I think there will be light at the end of the tunnel. We don't know how long the tunnel is, but there's the opportunity there.
Yes. So that's a really good point, because particularly a few weeks ago when we saw, the sort of run on some of the products in supermarkets and shortages there, people were starting to turn to smaller independents, farm shops, things like that. And I hope, it's certainly my desire, and I'm optimistic that people will discover, if you like, a newly found or reaffirmed affection for independent businesses that I hope lasts well beyond the end of this crisis, because it's times like this where those local businesses have shone through, and they don't just deserve our support during a time of crisis, they deserve it all year round.
Definitely, and their agility, because sometimes they are smaller businesses, has meant that they've actioned things straight away. I can think of
absolutely
Churchfield's local to us to be able to do delivery service and online baskets and things. It's been great to see how people haven't gone through the doom and gloom stage for too long. They've recognised it's something we can't change, and actually gone into planning mode and thought, we can do something about this now. It doesn't have to be like that forever. We can do something and make something from it. So yeah, I think I'm very proud Droitwich person myself, and being part of Wychavon is something that I'm very, very pleased with, and it is great to see the businesses that are around us. And that's one of the reasons we wanted to start filming these podcasts, because it's just to give people the opportunity to see that, okay, in their four walls it might not seem too pleasing, too positive, but actually if you kind of hear what's going on outside, very positive things happening. So you mentioned there was a long list of things that you've got coming for Pershore, Evesham and Droitwich. Would you mind just sharing a couple more if you can, just so that people kind of know what they can expect in the future? And as you mentioned earlier, Wychavon are very well funded, so something like this, whilst it is obviously a horrible event that we're going through, it won't really deter from the plans that are still agreed and set up. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, Wychavon's strategy, whilst it's been adopted recently, I think we're realistic that some things won't get delivered in the timeframes we've expected them to, just as the staff, the council are focused on other things, because we're focusing really on that response to coronavirus, and then we've got to get through the recovery phase.
I think we all expect the pause. The pause is impact on things, but still a delivery would still.
Absolutely. I mean, we're still focused to delivering on the strategy that we've got to, ensuring that every year Wychavon and the towns within it, Droitwich, Evesham, Pershore, all of the villages, are places that get better year on year. I certainly think that the focus on the town centres in particular is going to remain, first and foremost at the absolute top of everything that we do. And the stresses and strains are already there. The high streets were challenged anyway, and the general vitality of town centres were challenged to a point. And so ensuring that we focus on that will almost certainly be, absolute top priority when we come out of this, thinking about what the fallout looks like and what that new sort of economic landscape looks like.
Brilliant. Well, Bradley, thank you ever so much for your time. So Bradley, leader of Wychavon District Council, as I said, really appreciate you joining us today and for what you've told us. So if you are obviously a homeowner that is struggling, or a business owner and you haven't yet applied for your grant, then please do jump onto their website. Bradley, if you don't mind just giving us that web address again, just so that people can write it down now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's www.wychavon.gov.uk/coronavirus. And I'd just like to put on record my thanks to all of the businesses across Wychavon that have adapted, with sort of, record sort of speed to this new environment that we're all in. I'd like to express, heartfelt thanks to all of the community groups as well, because we've seen remarkable efforts where people have come together and they've supported their neighbours, their friends, people who in some cases they knew already, and they've discovered new people on their doorstep, and striking up new friendships. And I think that's another positive that will come out of this, a stronger sense of community spirit. And in turn that ties into the points that we both made a moment ago about supporting their local communities economically too. So everyone has done a tremendous job, but everyone is sort of, affected by this, and there is support out there if people need it. So businesses and individuals, if you're feeling vulnerable, financially or otherwise, please do take a look at the district council website and see what support is available, because we will certainly help out, as much as we possibly can within the parameters and resources that we've got available to us.
Fantastic. Thank you. That's brilliant. We'll be back in the next few days with another interview on how other community members are coping. For now, just want to leave you with a stay home, stay safe, and thanks ever so much for listening.